All right, going live in 3, 2, 1. Going live.
Hello, this is Through a Therapist Eyes with YouTube Live. You'll see a funny face if you look around at the pictures. We have a Adam Cloninger replacement kind of fella. That's the way I'm going to introduce you. How about that, Jack?
I can be the Adam replacement today.
All right, fellow. You got to have that on there. Adam replacement fellow.
The feller.
The feller.
Yeah,
okay,
one's out there. Yeah.
So Adam is still out with some family stuff. He's doing well. I can tell you he's fine. He may miss next month as well, so we're playing that by ear. This is the February month review show that we do on YouTube. So this is before we turn the live mics on, as you know. If you're catching us for the first time on this platform, then we do this on Thursdays. This is the before the show that you get on Spotify, Apple, iTunes. Where are all the places people get podcasts nowadays?
I just say your preferred podcast platform.
I hate those coined terms though. Like wherever you get your podcast, I don't want to be that guy.
You got to, because there's so many.
I know there are. So, that's what we do. Neil's hanging out with us as well from behind the curtain.
Once a month. So that's all you need.
Yes, sir. So the introduction for the show is ready whenever you guys are, if you're ready to pop the recording.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1.
Hello, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes, and you are about to hear the February month in review. This is Leap Day. Happy Leap Day, Neil.
Woohoo!
Happy Leap Day.
Yeah, no, it's not Wednesday. Gosh,
Hump
I'm
day.
all sorts of messed up today. Yeah,
it is
Leap
Day. So if you're watching on the YouTube Live or check out the show on YouTube, you will see a different face. This is Mr. Jack. Did I get it right? Fortenberry, right?
That's right.
I nailed it, Neil.
Good job.
You are proud.
Very proud.
All right.
Or as my wife says in a British accent, Fortinbrie. That's how it's supposed to be.
So you're a cheese man?
Cheese man.
That was so. Let's just stop.
Sorry, dad jokes. I've been a dad too long.
Oh, man.
Let's.
All right, listen. So this is February the 29th, and we are recording the February month in review. Usually we have a panel of therapists that hang out with us, and this is a month in review where Neil comes out of the curtain and hangs out with us to review the shows, and usually Adam is with us. We have Jack here while Adam is out. Appreciate you joining us, Jack, for sure. Got the book that is out. You got to have to check the cover. We got to do some promo stuff with this. We've got Through a Therapist's Eyes, Re-Understanding Your Marriage and Becoming Your Best Self as a Spouse, if I'm correct about that. I'm still getting used to it.
I don't know. It'll take you about 3 months to get the right title, but I still haven't seen the title or the.
Oh, you haven't seen the cover?
I haven't seen the cover. I've yet to see it. You've mentioned it so many times in all the different calls we have, but I have yet to see it.
I apologize. Well, I was gonna do a thing of like choosing and like do a survey thing, and I just skipped all that because I'm like, I know what I want it to be. It's gonna be that.
Just pick what you want. Yeah, just go with it.
The color is green, and there is some serious story behind the color choice. So I'll just leave it at that for now. So we're excitement building for that this year, guys. You will be hearing a little bit about it and seeing it come out around November. I'm kind of really, really excited about that project. So this is a YouTube, so we need you to subscribe, click the buttons, do the things. Neil, John always wants how many stars?
I think he wants 5 stars on Apple iTunes.
He's upset about that, man.
He does, yes.
5-star reviews.
And if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you follow and listen to your preferred podcast place.
Oh, yeah, say that.
Whatever the term is that Jack's better at than I am.
Wherever you get your podcasts, yes. Apple iTunes, you can actually leave reviews. Listen, your job is to help us do that because that helps us get found with all the algorithms. If you enjoy the content, we really ask that you step in to do that. It's very, very helpful. Contact at Through a Therapist's Eyes is the way to contact us. Listen, Jack, in the beginning of every show, I say it for very real reasons, plural, because I believe in that this is the human experience, and we do endeavor to figure this stuff out together. So I appreciate you joining us to accomplish that task.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Do you know that we have also a show sponsor?
It's a bank, I believe, right?
It is a bank. Impressive. Neil, who's our sponsor? Where are they from, and what's the deal with that?
First Horizon Bank. They are a branch in the Southeast America. They have 330 plus locations, and they're out of Memphis, Tennessee, but they are basically a big time bank with a good old local feel. It's very comfortable going in. They really strive to help people understand their financial literacy. So if you're looking for a place to kind of get away from the big banks and you want to have the same services but better customer support, go check out First Horizon Bank.
You did that so well.
It's like he's done it before.
I mean,
I actually haven't. So
that is a first.
That's impressive.
That is a first.
Nailed it. First take.
First try.
We do have to pay the bills, guys. We have a buy a cup of coffee on the website that really helps us out too. Really, $5 a month that pays for stuff. We do need that. I don't mind saying that. Lastly, also to cover angles, we have talked about before, haven't highlighted it all the time, but a shout out to Reed Ferguson. He is the creator of the intro music, and we appreciate Reed for him doing that. He does private shows, personal events, so go out, check him out when he's out at various establishments. And yeah, Reed's awesome. Spells his name weird though on the .com, so it's REIDT. Ferguson, FERGUSON.com. Check him out on Instagram and hire him. He's awesome. So yeah, Jack, let's pay that bill too and talk about like who are you? What do you do? We want to check people out. Your podcast. I know you got a lot of ideas, cool stuff about podcasting. So what's up?
Yeah. So basically, what I do by day is different from what I do, with the personal business side things.
Superhero kind of thing?
A little bit.
Sorry.
I wear a cape, but it's okay. I get called names, but whatever.
Like Cheese Man or something?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Sorry.
So I'm a programmer. I'm an application developer by day. And then my side business, I help particularly small business owners create effective content for marketing and to increase their brand, generate leads, all that fun stuff. So, you can check out my website to learn more at cdpmediainc.com.
And the website is?
www.cdpmediainc.
He said that way too fast.
www.cdpmediainc.com.
All right, we'll leave that be to what it is. cdp.com.
cdpmediainc.com.
Okay, there. All right, here we go. Off we go. So Adam loves to create a cool segment that we do. It's been fun. I've learned about some trippy things, Jack. Have you ever heard of my favorite? You know where I'm going, Neil, right? Night fighting. That was like he brought up night fighting one time, and we went down a rabbit hole talking about like literally people that dress up like knights and fight. It's really like cool.
Oh yeah,
have you heard of this?
LARPing.
No. LARPing with real weapons and real armor.
Yeah, like
yes.
for real.
That sounds very sketchy.
No, it's legit. There's links.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, I don't know where it is, but I think there was even a show about it. But yeah, these guys dress up in medieval armor and do the whole thing. I don't think the swords are 100% sharpened, so they're a little dull. Yeah. But yeah, you're literally getting hit with swords and maces
Axes
and usual
and maces
stuff.
I will not be doing that.
It's pretty amazing. And actually, it's not overseas. That is actually local. I have actually, since we did that show, Neil, I have I don't know if I can say that on air. I can guarantee that it is actually a local group and stuff that does this stuff too. It's pretty pretty neat. So down the rabbit hole with Jack, I guess, is what we're going to try this week. Have you got a rabbit hole for us?
Yeah, and this kind of goes along with what I do with CDP Media, but I've been looking a lot into neuromarketing. Or do you know what neuromarketing is?
Ooh, that's a good word combination. That's for sure.
It is. It's. I think it's. It's not new. Marketers have been using psychological tactics for a long, long time.
Oh, yeah.
But we're starting to, hook people up to EEG machines and then show them different ads and see how the brain reacts to certain things. And neuroscientists are studying it even more and more. So it's becoming kind of a big deal, and it's kind of concerning. And I want to talk to you a little bit about ethics, maybe, and what do you think of a word that I learned, not subliminal, but midliminal.
I don't even know what that is.
So
midliminal?
Yeah. So subliminal has been outlawed. They actually passed laws on subliminal messaging and marketing because it's a thing and it's effective. Yeah.
Very effective.
But midliminal is let's say you were shooting this podcast right now, but behind me we have a clock with the hands at 10 and 2, which kind of looks like a smile. and people start kind of taking in these things in their brain and associating happiness, and there's all these little tricks and stuff that they use. But yeah, I didn't know if you heard about that before.
So I don't know. What do you think? First off, Neil, I want to pull you in and gather my thoughts, because it's a fascinating topic that I have a lot of interest in, honestly.
It kind of goes back to the implicit bias we talked about, with those things that are human nature. Like you said, the smiley face makes you feel comfortable. I mean, on my side, doing email marketing, talking to different customers, like what you say or how you say it, or that image you use, like it's a huge tactic that you don't understand until, like, why did that picture make me feel good versus this one made me feel bad? It's like all those sub things. And it's amazing when it comes to marketing. You almost need to be a psychologist sometimes to understand that side of it. And I think that's the difference between the good marketing campaigns and the bad, or the shows that are popular. And those are little tricks that I think he knows. I think he knows a lot of tricks.
So let me also kind of state what the attempt is. So the attempt is to bypass, I forget the terminology, but the top layer of thinking and get down to the primal layer of thinking.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. So to entice someone to do something, they could affect emotion. Something that anger, something that goes right to that primal state that logic goes out the window.
So here's the thing. Do you know Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Right. Love this guy.
Yep.
He's got an awesome show, Star Talk.
Little. I fall. I think I've programmed myself. If I hear Neil, I fall asleep. So I will I will put Cosmos on and just I'll be out.
What the heck? How do you sleep with that? Because they have a deep show and so many cool. So those of you that don't know, he's an astrophysicist. He's pretty well known in pop culture, mixing together with the science culture, which is the goal of his show Star Talk. And he's just an impressively intelligent guy in the science community. He's really very effective at communicating and explaining very detailed, depthy scientific stuff, specifically and especially about astrophysiology.
The Carl Sagan lineage.
Carl Sagan kind of guy, exactly, right? So I loved his quote, and I've quoted him several times, because what he is of the belief that I am of the belief also is that neurology specifically, the whole field, is like the next greatest bastion for scientific learning. Now think about that statement for a minute. The next greatest bastion of scientific learning is neurology. This is a dude that's talking about nebulous stars and bigger than you can imagine concepts and small micro energy fields with, amazing things that are all in astrophysiology. It's unbelievable. Yet he is going to neurology. So, Jack, that's what I mean when I love this topic. When you look at neurological based practice in the media concept in the age of information that we're in, like, we could explode on this all month. I don't know how to narrow it down to the depth of what's going on.
Well, and that's why I wanted to discuss more the ethical,
right?
Because yeah, it's a well of knowledge. But the thing is after reading that stuff, I was like, should I implement this for my business, or should I implement it but educate? Because if you can educate somebody to spot being manipulated in that kind of way, then maybe people will be less susceptible to it.
The ethics of it are fascinating, because there's such an involved psychological process that goes into it, right? And I want to think about it in the way of capitalizing on, like you said, Neil, the implicit bias, which we did a whole show on at episode, 178? I almost have it memorized.
173?
Yeah, because we've quoted it so many times. And those are beliefs that you have that you don't even know that you have. The psychological process with subconsciousness and hypnosis comes involved, which, if you wonder if that's real or not, it is very real. So what you're talking about is the ethics kind of human interaction almost, I would guess, if you're not going subliminal, which is different, but probably not that much far from that, to be honest with you.
They're teetering that line. Right?
It's really gray area for sure. But I want to dumb it down and say, like, part of that is just human interaction. So if I'm smiling when I'm doing a cheer contest the whole time as a cheerleader, I am doing exactly what you're talking about.
If you bought a car,
right,
you're being the salespeople. Have been
it's
trained.
It's a whole My son's gotten into sales, and he tells me, "Dad, it's a game." I'm like, I know. It's human interaction. So in that way, as long as you're not being kind of devious with it, listen, we're living.
They are.
Well, yeah.
Well,
I mean, especially the season of, you want to talk about a little bit politics. You can.
It's a heck of a rabbit hole, Jack. We got to hold ourselves back, man, because
you can do a whole episode.
Well, I mean, one thing to think about. You look at like TikTok. TikTok brought in a whole bunch of neuroscientists to figure out the algorithms and study what makes it addictive, and
nailed it.
like it. Yeah. Oh God, yeah, they did. Yeah, and then YouTube Shorts. It's like those are just as bad. Like
because this stuff works, and the thing that I would say on the ethical level, it's one hell of a thing to try to regulate or needle down into the minutia of what's going on. I don't know if it's almost possible when you start getting to lesser levels than just pure subliminal stuff, because this stuff works, like in carnival shows and stuff. I mean, people will play mind tricks and games on you, like, and it's not stupid people. Like, you listening, you need to understand with this topic, you are susceptible to this stuff, and it happens all the time. It's just little sleights of the hand, little comments that are made, and there's whole industries that are built on this long term, not new with neurology. So yeah, I think we got to get out of this rabbit hole. We'll be here for a while. It's fascinating, but it's tough to manage the ethics of it in the age of information that we're in.
Just to close it out,
okay,
I will give everybody one thing to look out for, and then when you see it, you're like, oh, this is what they're talking about. So if you go to a website or you see an advertisement and they have 3 pricing tiers or 3 different things,
sure,
the one they want you to go for is the one in the middle. Because
always.
Yeah,
always.
So that's actually a neuro principle that is being exercised, and hopefully
it's just sales techniques. I mean, it's just good, solid.
But we're
marketing.
discovering why it works now. So
and refining it
a
lot.
And they pay companies of neuroscientists and stuff that specialize in neuromarketing tons of money.
I bet. Because it works.
Yeah, like Coke.
It works.
A lot of big brands.
We'll have to revisit that one, sir.
Absolutely. Let's move on. I want to find out what.
Let's go to episode. Let's go to episode 261, the Adderall epidemic. I'm prepared for you, Jack. You ready for this? I hate to put people on the spot, but I tend to do that.
I have a lot of experience with it.
What do you? What is ADHD in your mind's eye? In the public eye, I'm curious as a non-clinical person, because we did an in-depth discussion about it. This was a show that you really, I'll let you gather your thoughts. This is a show that you really want to check out, guys, because ADHD is it's a big topic. And, early 2000s, everyone had ADHD. It was a fad. Now it's not so much that way, but Victoria was awesome on this episode, genuinely and thoroughly sharing like her personal experience over a lot of years. And as you wonder if you have adult ADHD, this episode really can go a long way, not diagnostically. Don't get me wrong. We don't deliver therapy services in any way. Victoria would be so happy that I just said that. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot on there that will help you kind of discern what it is and how it operates in the adult world that you might wonder if you have or not. So this was a great show. So I'm curious, back to that in the non-clinical way, where's your brain go with ADHD and what it is and all about it?
I was first diagnosed.
Oh boy, okay.
With ADD when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and that's when I started Ritalin.
For you, the listener, I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't want to tell you that. So.
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah. So, as someone who has, I'm not a victim. It's not. I don't want to say. Yeah. Because I'm doing pretty well for myself.
Right.
But at the same time, there are challenges that I notice. My wife notices that
usually the spouse notices a lot.
Oh yeah.
That I have to, fight against, and it's very difficult when you're aware of it. The problem is not a lot of people are aware of it.
That's the big problem.
And but for me, I am ADHD without the H.
Right.
I get the brain works so fast. I get almost like zone locked. Like I can't do anything, but I sit and I'll think. Yeah, and that's what it's your brain goes so fast. I can cover so many topics. By the time we're done with this conversation, I'm 10 steps ahead of you, like
Right.
on a whole nother different thing. And then when I try to bring it up, I'll start at the end of my thought process, and you haven't even.
I'm not there.
And so so I gotta
Just
feel.
not
I'm
there.
like, I gotta remember. I'm like, okay, I'm ahead. I need to fill you in on how I got to from A to Z. Right?
You know, one of the things I like to help people understand when we're dealing with this is under normal circumstances, the human brain, don't hold me to the numbers, but the general gist is true. About 7 thoughts to the one that you can convey. And the reality of when you get into a manic state with bipolar, which is very different than ADHD, but similar in the sense of the thought process, with ADHD, what are you hitting, like 14, 20 thoughts per the one that you can say? It's zooming.
Zooming
It's
and
real zoomy.
But at the same time, I have learned it's almost a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of
I
it,
get that.
So rather than make it something that I struggle with, I have found ways, because personally, speaking of Adderall, I've been put on medication, and while it does help tremendously in terms of focus and slowing down and being able to coherently stay on one thing the whole way through, the side effects for me were horrible. Like
Right.
the sleep, the dreams felt so real. Like I'd wake up more tired than when I went to bed. If that makes sense. It was weird. But I've found ways of kind of mitigating that if I have to drive spouse crazy, but I'll have the TV on. I'll have monitors, all kinds of different stuff going on, because if I bombard myself, I can focus on one thing.
That's a word. Yeah. That makes no sense to me.
It's weird.
People that know me believe I have ADHD too, and maybe I have milder forms of it. I personally believe I have a learning disability, and I talked about that on the show, which is a different kind of flavor onto what happens with ADHD. Because if I'm watching, there's no way that I could sleep if the TV's on in the bedroom, for instance. Like I'm going to focus on something that's making noise there, and if you give me like 3 different directions, like I'm lost because I need to look at that one. It's so fascinating neurologically, again, by the way humans think and process data. And so that's what ADHD is. It's just data processing difference.
And I remember when I was in Thailand and Bangkok, it really hit me hard.
You know what happens in Bangkok stays in Bangkok, so don't be careful.
Bangkok's a great place.
Okay.
It's a great place. People are lovely. So yeah, I lived there for a while.
That's cool.
But they have a Starbucks, right? And I hadn't read a book, like, in case you can't, ADHD, it's very difficult to sit down and read a book. But I was at Starbucks, and things are going on all around me. And I just happened to pick up, I think it was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or something like that. And I was going to have a copy, I had a copy and a cup of coffee, and I was sitting there, and I found that I could focus, and I read that whole dang book.
Oh, my gosh.
And I was like, light bulb moment. I was like, that's the solution right there, is to have some kind of stimulus so that I could focus.
Parents freak out when I actually make the suggestion for ADHD kids to let them have their music, let them have their video, whatever, because they can literally then enable themselves to sit down and do work. And the parents are like, what?
It's weird.
It's
so
bizarre.
counterintuitive.
So the questions that we had, sorry, Neil, real quick. The questions that we had were on the Adderall epidemic. Do you know what Adderall actually does? Why would people overuse or abuse this? And is this effective response to ADHD? But sorry, Neil, what was that? I cut you off.
No, I was just thinking about, the purpose of the bombardment if you're thinking 14 thoughts and you're having your subconscious kind of hear all these different things, it kind of allows your brain to go off on those tangents so you can then focus on that one particular thing. So it makes sense, and I understand why that could be hugely beneficial to have that, because it does it's like I said, it does seem counterintuitive, but it's also when your brain's running that fast, giving it a couple things to kind of do it, it does basically now you're allowing yourself to say, oh, I'm going to focus on these couple things purposely while the rest of it just happens around you. It makes a lot of sense.
And I mean, if you utilize it right, your productivity can be quite amazing.
You just have to find the right stuff, I'm guessing, right? You have to find the right distractions.
Yeah.
But in the adult world, that's true. But like you said, you've got to learn an understanding of it, because at the same time as you can feel super productive, you're productive internally, and externally other people aren't catching the productiveness. Right. So you've got to be able to manage the interactions, particularly in the adult world, because what you think you've produced, you haven't even completed. Other people are waiting for the completion when you're working on completing 2 or 3 other tasks. And it's like, whoa, what is that? But if you know that, as the adults figure out in the maturity level, because it
self-awareness,
the self-insight, absolutely, then you can capitalize on a lot of those different things and multitask.
And I say this to everybody, and I know it can seem a little woo-woo, but at the same time,
I love that word. I use that all the time, Neil.
Meditation, tremendously helpful for people with ADHD.
Yeah.
Tremendously helpful. Mm-hmm. Life-changing helpful.
And it's a skill.
It's difficult.
Super frustrating at first. Mm-hmm. Back me up if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. And then once you begin to build those skills, I get your point. Okay, so what we didn't get to talk about, Neil, very much, I think, which is kind of, I said it many times why I like these review shows, is the actual use of Adderall and the abuse that can occur from this stuff. So let's focus on that.
I've got a good one for you about that
for a bit. Go ahead and rock us out with that, because Jack, first of all, you mentioned the side effects you had, mm-hmm. and I want to focus and hone in a little bit on how to properly use these medications. Which I got to tell you, listening out there, these are helpful tools. These are not solutions to manage your mental health.
Right. So I was probably 17 years old, right? I'm in a high school, like close to graduating. I remember I had a few friends come over the house, and they were like, "Hey, we got," I think they were studying or something. They're like, "Hey, we got some Adderall." It's like, and this I hadn't been on Ritalin in a long, long time, and this is kind of where I learned about Adderall. So everybody else, they took it, and they were going. Wired. And I took it, and I was...
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, there is a difference. People I was like, this is not for me. I was like, I understand what it's doing for you, but obviously my brain is a little different at the moment. So I was
that's a stark reality, isn't it?
Yeah. And it was a big kind of like, oh, I do have this.
That is so cool. And I almost shudder to say this on the air, but I've said it in therapy sessions, and this is not a formal suggestion. So this is not what I'm saying to do. Is try an Adderall pill. I mean, you just described what I'll tell adults. I don't like playing any kind of guessing games with kids. I want to make sure we got the right diagnosis. Right. I want to go through the proper channels. I want to go low dose, all that stuff, because they already have enough going on. But if you're an adult, then you will have the experience you literally just described, right?
It's weird,
and it almost kind of confirms or denies, like, oh yeah, I'm tripping me out because I've told people that. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is a confirmation almost, like a immediate too. It's not.
Yeah, no, it was a big, and for someone who'd been dealing with it for a long time without having that, real self-awareness. I mean, I thought it was when I was young, whatever. Yeah. And then it hit me, and I was like, oh, this is what you all feel like all the time. I was like, this is kind of weird, because there wasn't all the clutter. Like,
it was level.
It was weird.
What are you thinking, Neil?
It's just funny how your normal would be fast to us, and It's just funny the perspective thinking about that where
But it's not even that. It's like you're following a straight line, and you got, like, for people who don't have it, you could easily, it's not difficult, but for me it's kind of like
you get there with us, but
I'll
you're
get
crossing
there,
back and
but,
forth.
Victoria in her clinical work uses the spaghetti analogy. Before you cook the spaghetti, it's exactly like that straight line. Here's my thought, here's the next, and I'm going right there. But when you cook the spaghetti, it's still the same length, it's still the same thing, but it's ADD'd. Right. It operates completely differently, and you could tangle them all together and have this cool web and weave of thoughts and concepts and practices. But it's cooked spaghetti is very different than raw spaghetti noodles.
But like I said, that doesn't make it better or worse, in my opinion. I said, I found a lot of benefits, and that's another reason why I am not on medication right now. Like, because I find I've grown accustomed to how I operate, and I can, get
the safeguards.
yeah. And another weird thing, speaking of, treatment drugs to treat ADHD, I remember I was in college. I had to have my wife edit my papers because I'm incoherent sometimes and go all over the place. And she noticed a huge difference because I did get on Adderall then. But the funny thing was, when I talked to the doc, he was like, "Do you drink lots of soda?" And I was like, "A ton." And he's like, "Do you smoke cigarettes?" And at the time I was like, "A ton." And he's like, "You've been self-medicating for a long time."
Right.
And I didn't realize it, but caffeine and nicotine are both stimulants and do the same things.
Well, absolutely. Also, it is so rampant nowadays that the culture has changed with weed. My ADD kiddos and adults alike love weed because it does the similar sort of artificial way of really calming that whole neurosystem down, and it pulls a relaxation you can't get otherwise. And then people find weed and they're like, "Oh my gosh!"
Every day, that's how I sleep.
It's
I will have some kind of legal stuff
in North Carolina. We have legal substances,
but before, like, I don't do it recreationally. I literally use it as a sleep aid.
Yeah,
and unlike sleep medication, I don't wake up and feel that hangover. It feels more natural to me with that. So yeah, I mean, I use.
So a little in and out of what the medications are for really all mental health and substance, actually just mental health medications mostly. SSRIs, antidepressants. The thing of this is they're not a cure. I've said 1,000 times. I already said the quote. I'm gonna say it again because it's hugely important to understand. These are effective tools to manage mental health. They're just not solutions. Like, to this point, we do not have a solution for your OCD. We do not have a solution for the bipolar reality that you're living with, or whatever it is that a diagnosis might be. But we do have these tools that help us manage it. The imperfect science that it is, though, is real. So Neil might need a different dose than I need. You, Jack, may have side effects that I don't have. Mm-hmm. And, one effective medication might be better for you, Neil, and that Jack needs a different one of the same variety altogether. So it's really a frustrating hodgepodge of trial and tribulation of getting the right medication and getting the right dose and dealing with very real side effects, some such as dry mouth and sexual performance is a problem sometimes, the foggy brain with some of these medications, and oftentimes with like dry mouth, your body will adjust to these side effects, so you kind of fight through it. But man, depression treated with antidepressants is way better and life-changing for people in a positive way. It's just not perfect. There's so much to it.
But also, I think it's being prescribed for. I mean, for some things like Adderall, which is, how many molecules away from methamphetamine? You know what I mean? Like it's
one.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like
I'm correct.
The level of abuse that can come from that, from especially docs like over prescribing like that kind of medication.
Here's an interesting thing though. When Adderall was first come out, and Ritalin before that was the first generation of stimulant medications, it was a big deal. I am not finding, anecdotal as it is, this isn't scientifically studied, but I'm a substance abuse therapist as much as a mental health therapist. And other than college students that really want to do all-nighters and study a lot, because it'll help your focus when you're non-ADHD kind of as well, there's a lot of abuse there. That's where the big population is now. But I do not find people doing a lot of the crushing, doing a lot of the trying to snort or different things. When Adderall was new and the epidemic, that was more the epidemic then, that was really prominent. People have moved on to opioids and other different things. Yeah. Adderall's not really abused as much.
Well, the one thing that we talked about 6-9 months ago during the Adderall shortage was there was that online therapy service that almost every single doctor on there, like the instant prescription was like, oh, you need Adderall? Here you go. Here's a prescription.
Yeah.
So talk about the over-rampant prescribing of it. That was something, I mean, I don't think that was like 9 months ago or something that we had to think about that.
Well, also, it's a societal issue, too. I mean, think about how fast-paced American life is. Like when you're on something like a stimulant or a methamphetamine, you're almost living up to society's expectations. So, or cocaine, or like how big that was in the 80s and the 70s.
It was big in the 80s.
Because people can function and have more energy, and so it's kind of.
For those listening to the audio only show, I'd like to point out very clearly that Jack just put his 2 fingers of each hand in the air and put big fat air quotes on that. Right? Yeah. Because it is short-term energy. It's very dangerous. And we didn't really talk a lot about the abuses of these substances that don't do it. Use a prescription-based practice with a prescriber for this. You'll go, drink some coffee, college students.
Well, here's the question I have. Being a stimulant like a caffeine, like, is it similar to if someone drank a whole bunch of coffee and slowly built up a tolerance to caffeine kind of thing? Or like, what are some, like, if you do over abuse like an Adderall or Ritalin or one of those stimulant kind of things, what does it do? Like, what is that?
Yes, is the short answer, right? Like, it is a stimulant, and unlike antidepressants or mood stabilizers or things like that we use for antipsychotics for off-label stuff and actual schizophrenia and stuff like that, that you don't develop tolerance. You do not have these types of problems of abuse. If you try to take Prozacs and think you're going to get anything from it, it just doesn't. These are. Also, anti-anxiety agents are the benzodiazepines. They sell Xanax on the street.
Yeah, benzos are bad news.
It's really bad news. And now it's being mixed with fentanyl, which is a whole nother issue. But to answer your question, Neil, yes, there is a tolerance level with this that is of concern, which is why in long-term treatment regimens, they'll switch to Vyvanse and then go back to Adderall, right? And they'll even go back to the first generation with Ritalin to switch up. However, you can have long-term treatment with this and not have too much of a problem with, tolerance getting so high that you have to way overdose to get the effects.
But the concern is just like taking too much caffeine. It's a lot of stress on your system if you take too much over time.
Heart.
So that's what I was kind of getting at, like what a long-term, like of the abuse outside of just.
But that's why you go to prescribers, which I'm not a prescriber. I just have a lot of experience with this stuff that I can talk about it with intelligence.
And it's such a. If you ask, like, I'm sure you've seen TikToks and stuff being like, if you have trouble concentrating or blah, 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 or you have impulse control problems, you have ADHD, like it's, everybody has some form of. Right. Like, so it can be easily prescribed to people who don't
Well,
have this condition.
listening to Victoria last time, like, maybe I have ADD.
Exactly.
I was like, oh, my wife has it. Definitely.
Absolutely.
The whole
Listen.
conversation of, like, being 7 steps ahead and blurting out the end results. And then she's like, no, here's how I got here. Like, that's my wife sometimes.
But literally, that, like he was saying, the way take an Adderall pill. If you get jacked up and you start running around and like wanting to do stuff,
You get a lot of cleaning done.
Yeah, you get a lot of cleaning done. Then you probably don't have it. Like if you zone out and you kind of and like they
you should not take Adderall and feel chill.
Yeah,
it's not.
Yeah.
All right, we got to move on a little bit. We could stay there for a while, but just as a reminder, Victoria has been very gracious with us, and we got the game, Neil. You remember the game that we're playing with Victoria? Yep. Why don't you break that down real quick?
Oh, so because she had a kid recently and then breastfeeding, she's been off of her ADHD medication. And so what Chris and I are kind of doing is trying to see, like, when we do the shows, whatever, see if we can pinpoint when she gets back on some sort of a medication for it.
And I do work with her. John works
with
her.
You have the unfair advantage of being like 5 days a week.
Advantage. I can tell you, not yet. So stay tuned.
Well, I was talking more. I'm like, I don't really see it made, like you said, you kind of see some things when you work with her, so maybe the lack of finishing things, but like when just interacting with her, I'm like, I don't really know why she would need medication personally. Like, she's cheerful, she's happy, like interacting, I don't see a purpose for it. Now, I don't work with her, I don't live with her. She might need it.
And I think honestly it's a lot of her own experience, Neil.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a choice that you make in how you want to operate. Like Jack, you made the opposite choice. But let me ask you, Jack. Let's spend a little bit of time on one, and I'm afraid of time, man. We went along on the Adderall thing, but that's okay because I think a lot of people are in it. Which one do we want to focus on a little bit more depthier than the other one we might have to be a little short with? So episode 262, Culture Wars and What Happened to Professionalism. And we talked a little bit about this guy named Jordan Peterson in Canada. And the other is episode 263. We talked about compassion getting confused with codependency, right? So which one sounds most interesting to you? Go.
Either or. I'd say the former.
Okay, codependence. So let's go towards the professionalism. I'm kind of glad you chose that one because I'm really not, man, because professionalism is something that, man, Neil, I think we had a rousing conversation with that one, didn't we? Yeah,
we did a little bit with Victoria. And
yeah.
When you have a 60-plus-year-old ex-military, ex-pastor, right, very straight-laced, like always coming in with ties, and then you have Victoria next to him with like either holy jeans or yoga pants and her t-shirt with her hair in a messy bun.
Yikes.
The idea of professionalism in a therapy office is complete polar opposites. It was definitely very interesting.
But what would you define the word for me?
Professionalism. Good question. So the 3 questions that we did with this show: what is professionalism? How does the mental health profession need to interact with social issues? We didn't talk about that much. We won't really cover that today either. And then how is mental health, though, a part of professionalism? And I do want to hit that. So interesting to think about what this really is to think about the core components, right? Ethics and integrity, reliability and accountability, respect and courtesy, competence and expertise. These are components of what go into someone acting professionally. There's been shifts in intergenerational realities. I mean, for the first time in the history of mankind, we if you think about it, we really have like 4 different generational cohorts working together. You know, baby boomers are aging out, but they're still working. Us Gen Xers, y'all millennials, and Yers, you know, the Gen Z or Gen Y, whatever they're called, they're really starting to enter into the workforce in high-level professional positions. So you've got a big shifting that's kind of going on, you know, with technology and communication, and you just mentioned, Neil, the casualization of things. So, you know, the work-life balance, you know, the education that you have, you know, the accountability that you have, the culture that's in the group. I mean, professionalism is something that unfortunately gets dissed. It doesn't, I feel like it doesn't get its due like it needs to and used to. So that's kind of my stance. But does that give you a sense of what the word is, what we're referring to?
Sort of, yeah. Yeah. I get it, because it's the generational thing. I think the perspectives that change, and I mean, things are cyclical, so I'm sure that they will come back around to being more of boomer-esque professionalism at work or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I am a huge fan of the casualization because
young people are
listen. Well, I mean,
younger, I should say.
Justification. If your product that you're putting out is still quality, you're empathizing with other people. You're working close and have good relationships with within the hierarchy of whatever profession you're working in. Then I see no problem.
Here's the thing, Jack. I'll leave you off the hook and not put you on a spot. And I want to hit you, Neil, and just see how you do. If you put dress aside, let's say that's a part of professionalism. What are some of the other aspects you think of? And fairly enough, you heard our conversation. So what are some of the other aspects that involve with professionalism?
I mean, to me, it's interactions, how you deal with someone. That's a big thing. How you talk to someone. Is it, yo, bro, what's up? Or is it like, hey, good morning, how are things going? That's one part, because there's a way that you get a little bit too casual, too friendly in a business environment. That's one side of it. The other side of it is, I think, the punctuality. You have a lot of times where the meeting, people show up 5-10 minutes late, or they don't hit deadlines, or they just don't take the time to get things done like they should. That's a big thing when it comes to casualization. Well, once again, if you're getting your product done, but then what if the product's a day late and then that pushes everything back? That to me is a professionalism, or communicating that, hey, I ran into some snags, my deadline needs to go back. So the communication needs to be there versus, that's professionalism to me. Those are the other aspects besides closes.
There are so many aspects, and you did hit some. If you think about the way that we operate together in a group of people, the professionalism just doesn't need to be there when you're in a little league sports program. But when you amp that up and you're trying to accomplish a goal together, such as an AAU team, really experienced players on a high level will tell you, we need professionalism. Make this, they talk about it in the NFL or in, Major League Baseball, like this is your job. It's timeliness. It's the coachability, the interactions emotionally, the filter that you put on, the detail that you have, the way that you filter your speech, cursing or not cursing, being purposeful, about your dress, but the spacing that you have when you're proxemics with body, like all of the nonverbal communication, all of the purposeful things you do together as a group, your expertise, your continuing to learn. Like there's so much that's involved that people don't think about.
Yeah, but also, I mean, that's the topic. It also depends on industry, culture. There's so many dependents, variables in professionalism. It kind of depends on where you fall. And now that, it is different now with, like you said, technology and everything changing. There's a lot more different kinds of industry out there as well. And so one industry's professionalism will look completely different from another industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
what are the norms?
A different culture, both of them will look.
And you have to look at what are the norms for your industry. We talked a lot about boards of ethics and professional groups that really help. They don't help. They require that. And it's there to protect the public.
And now that you mentioned like therapists and mental health,
right?
That's a weird one, because do you want your therapist to be in a suit, or do you want to be more casual and be able to be more like friend, like break that kind of barrier?
The Board of Ethics makes sure that our behavior is professional, and you have to follow the professionalism requirements because you're providing a service that has to have a uniformed code. In lieu of that, it sounds crazy, but you'll have all kinds of behavior otherwise that's really detrimental to the therapy service. Like, people that sit on ethics boards know that people have sex with their clients. Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
They have all kinds of blended relationships, professional boundaries are crossed with like, financial gain and, building your platform and your brand through, look, there's a lot that goes into that. And so it's fine to water some things down with intergenerational changes in technology and all, but boy, you got to be aware.
But at the same time, like, professionalism and ethics, are we talking about the exact same thing? Because
they are intertwined intently.
Because, like, dress code, let's say, or the language, I wouldn't consider part of that.
Core components of professionalism: ethics and integrity, reliability and accountability,
yes.
respect and courtesy, competence and expertise.
Yes.
These things are all a part of what we go into thinking about how do we act out, being professional.
Well, and I think you have it hit on the head. It's industry specific. If you're a plumber, well, it's like when you get your HVAC worked on, we have the guys come in.
I want my plumber to be on time, for crying out loud,
right.
please.
Or when they come in, we always
we'll
have
be there between 1 and 7.
Oh my gosh.
But no, like with the HVAC, when they come in for their biannual check, they come in, they put their little booties on their shoes to protect. They're always in their uniform. There is a professionalism to that industry. Now, after they leave and they're talking to their buddy in the truck, that professionalism is going to be different than when in front of another person,
right?
Because it's industry specific.
Right.
A construction worker who's out there framing in the mud or doing whatever is going to have different needs than a therapist on a couch or a CEO at a big corp, or even us in IT when we were like
industry
we were
specific.
different.
Neil,
Yeah,
when you're providing a service for me and I'm hiring you as a plumber, I expect that you're sober. Right?
We hope.
It's professional. Like, this is a service we're providing. I do expect that you use the company vehicle when you're not drinking beers at lunch.
Well, one example of a shift is one of the sysadmins you used to work with. He worked actually around the corner here, and the CEO was like, or whatever it was, director or something. All the sysadmins had to wear suit and ties. Like, they all had to wear ties with their stuff.
Going hardcore.
Well, after he watched one of the sysadmin guys have to work on a computer in the plant, he's like, that's stupid. Like, why am I having you guys do this? And
right.
He's changed the whole thing and been like, no, you guys don't have to wear that anymore. Because you realize that some of those things are not necessary. They're there for certain reasons, and it doesn't mean that when it comes down the corporate ladder.
Oh, we got big issues across the United States, I suspect around the world, with requirements to be in the office versus work.
Oh yeah,
at home.
that's a big thing right now.
What's the professionalism there? Yeah. So look, we got to move on. I'd love we can stay on each of these. See what I mean? No, that's an important topic that we did take a little bit of a deep dive on. Oh, honorable mention with that also. I didn't get to talk about it a whole lot the other day, and I'm not going to be able to talk about it a whole lot now. Mental health issues impact professionalism. I can't tell you how many times in my professional life, I've had to kind of manage as a founder and as a leader, issues where mental health can be a really big part of how somebody's performing. And I mean, you're anxious, or you have depression, or you're grieving, or
But some would consider that new generational. Like, you think in the 60s and 70s they thought of mental health in a corporate setting, or
Unfortunately not.
So I would say that's one good thing that has come up, is that kind of awareness in millennial Gen Z kind of workplace that are being
and I think a lot of that I think we're kind of at a point where some of it's gone too far.
Oh, yeah.
And we have, with a lot of stuff that's going in the generational changes now, it's a teeter-totter, and we're on the opposite side right now, and we're going to slowly try to shift our weight. And I think we're seeing a shift where we're kind of balancing it. But yeah, there's a lot of mental health awareness. It's like, oh my God, I need a safe space, and I need to take a day off because I just can't handle
Oh, man. Sure.
Okay, I understand. Maybe you need to take a longer lunch today, but you don't have to take 3 days off because you lost in Call of Duty. Like, come on, guys. So I think
that would be a video game.
So yes,
listeners.
I think there's an importance that we are more aware of mental health when it comes to your job and occupation. But I think we're also at a point now. It's like, okay, where's this balance? And I think we're slowly finding, as a society, we're slowly finding out. Okay, some of it is some fortitude. You got to go build up some fortitude and resilience, and some of it is, okay, we do need to be more aware of these because it's a bigger problem.
And I think you're thinking about the American culture, but as I am not a cultural expert, around the world per se, for sure, that's my qualifier. I think there's an experience that's really worldwide with the technology influences and different capabilities that we have and all of that. So let's get to compassion gets confused with codependence. Jackie said this was kind of the more interesting of the two, although you watered that down saying they're both great, which of course they are. But
I think both are really deep.
They
topics,
are.
right?
They are. Rescuing and saving others is not the healthy goal, is the setup here. The 3 questions, do you know what codependence is? I have a nice way to slice through that. Think of examples in life of this really happening. And curious, Neil, frame your thoughts up and revisit the whole 3rd question and what John was talking about with, like, what's the opposite of codependence? I thought that was kind of interesting, and I hadn't really thought about it and really wanted Victoria and John to talk with us about it. We didn't do it a lot, but the opposite of codependence was fascinating to me. So, Jack, do you again, as a non-clinical person, I'm curious, codependence is a term that's like these psychology terms that are thrown around our societies nowadays. And I love it because people are more aware, but it drives me nuts how people sort of just have so many myths, which is part of the standard of the show, blowing up stereotypes and myths. I think codependence definitely is one of these that gets confused or whipped around a good bit. Have you heard codependence? Do you know what it is? How does this operate in your mind?
So, yeah, codependency in a relationship would be detrimental to both sides, right?
Right.
So it's in that cycle of
cyclical.
Yeah, cyclical. But yeah, I haven't really. I guess one behavior influences the other, which then feeds. But I mean, codependence sounds more of a, in my head, equal footing, which I don't believe in codependency. There's got to be some sort of alpha in that relationship, right?
Yeah. So here's what I've developed over the years to kind of cut through this for you, right? There's a series of realities that go on to really demonstrate codependency. So, Jack, if I'm codependent with you, basically what it means is if you are well, then I am well, right? If you are not well, then I am not well.
So I would be
my
the
goal,
alpha kind of.
Well, it's not really a balance in that kind of a way. It's just that my emotional experience goes by this simple set of thinking, right? And you don't really think it, you just experience it. So again, if I'm codependent with you, if you are well, Jack, then I am well. If you are not well, then I am not well. So my behavior, my goal, my focus is to make you well, ultimately, so that I will be well. See? And that's a codependent reality. I'm dependent, in a sense, on what your mood is, what your wellness is, because ultimately I'm
So
I'm
where
with
do you
that.
see that? Is that like specifically abusive relationships?
Definitely happens in abusive relationships. It was born in substance abuse relationships. This is where we got to learn the concept kind of when we started getting aware of family dynamics. And we took a deep dive on this, you listening out there, to get into that, because there's an important history that feeds into our understanding of how this works. Real briefly, you had an addict who was doing crazy behavior, and then we identified family patterns because it affects the whole family intently. The spouse was doing all kinds of wild behaviors with this alcoholic, like dumping alcohol on the drain and monitoring how much they drank and making sure that they had a ride. If they were sick in bed and hungover, they would make sure that they got called in sick. Like whatever problems are there, the spouse is like running around doing all this crazy stuff to make sure things are okay. Why? Because if their spouse wasn't okay, they're not okay. If their spouse is good and happy and not angry, then I'm good. So I'm going to make sure there's no problems. I'm going to make sure everything's calm around you. I'm going to dance on eggshells so that we'll have peace and I will be okay. It's a really interdependent dance that gets created.
And I'm guessing there's levels of this, right?
Yeah, of course.
Because I would imagine that
Yeah.
most marriages, you hope there's some level of codependency.
Okay,
right?
perfect. It's an awesome segue. Do you remember the scales that John and I talked about, Neil?
A little bit.
Okay, I got your brain on the opposite. So I actually developed a scale, and John was talking about it in lockstep with me. Because you're right, Jack. There's a relation, right? When you connect, meet, greet, date, whatever, or your friends, you're related to each other. Even acquaintances, you have a relationship, so you're related. But when you begin to be involved with each other in a very healthy way, you develop this interaction, this symbiotic stuff. That's I play off you, you play off me, and you become interrelated. That's the second quarter of this scale. So the healthy version is interrelated, but then you cross over this line into this codependent land, and the midpoint to the third quarter is codependent, and then you get into like severe examples of this, such as the abusive relationship, where it's the dependent. So it's really on a whole half moon scale.
So going to the extreme,
Oh boy, as he would, right?
Manson.
Oh boy.
Coles. Is that to the extreme?
That's probably so. Oh, absolutely. That's a good point. We didn't talk about that.
What about cults and the members that do pretty much anything for the cult leaders to keep them happy, and because they're happy, I'm happy.
Do you think that
your life
the underlying
depends on the leader? If the leader is not happy with me, I cannot live. It can get severe. And then the abusive relationship's probably a little less severe. I think you're right. I wonder if that's curious. What would be the most kind of codependent relationship? I diabolically need to think about that. That sounds horrible, though. I don't know if I want to go there.
I think it goes back to what was the Munchausen's, whatever the by proxy thing that we talked about before in that episode. What's the name of that, where they make the parent makes the kid sick and then does all the procedures?
Yeah. John was talking about
whatever
that,
it's called.
Right. I think you're right. Munchausen's.
Yeah, by proxy or something. Because you're legitimately, but that's kind of an opposite, because you feel like when they get treatment to be well, you feel like you're the hero kind of thing. It's a very weird situation.
Yeah,
but
you basically get your ego fed. You feel good about yourself because you've made your kid sick and you can come in and be the hero. But
yet it's kind of weird because it's actually not really codependent, because you're actually hurting the person, so you feel better. It's real. That's actually weird. That's actually completely different. Yeah. But no, I think it's important, because in a relationship, as you mentioned, the difference between codependence and like the other ones you talked about was you want your significant other to be well because you care about them and you want them well, not because of how it makes you feel, but it's really about you want them to be happy. Now, the whole phrase of the happy wife, happy life is a whole nother thing where it's like, I want her happy, so I have a better life. But
here's the title of the show. You're on point, Neil, because you have compassion being confused with codependence. Now, listen to the definition of compassion. I think I wrote it down again here. Genuine concern for others' well-being, accompanied by a desire to alleviate suffering and promote growth. The gray area is dangerous, because you can slip over, and that's why I created, Jack, that scale. I mean, we're related to each other, and then we're interrelated. I mean, you have compassion, you care, but boy, that can tip over into a different zone where that compassion and desire to alleviate your suffering moves into a codependent thing.
Obsession.
Do you know the type of relationship that's really prone to? Parenting. Right? I'm going to maintain the bold statement that almost universally, if not universally, in a parenting relationship, you've got to have elements of codependence that go in there. Bad examples of helicopter parenting and totally smothering
necessary.
Your kid, enmeshment. But even typical parenting, like, I fall into that, man. I don't want my Adam to have a hard time now. He's away from home. He just did boot camp.
Let it go. He's an adult. Come on, Chris.
Neil.
Let it go.
All right, brother.
Yeah.
Trying.
But to also push back, like, I don't think when you're talking about your spouse and wanting to see them happy, you're not. Yes, you're probably doing it in your head for them, but it also makes you feel you're doing it. I don't, and this is maybe cynical.
Altruism, brother. Altruism. It's a thing.
I don't think anybody does anything selflessly. Well, I mean,
We are human.
Yeah, exactly. Like
We
you're
are
getting
human.
something from it, whether it be an emotional response or whatever that increases that dopamine level or whatever it is, right? Like you're getting something from
Being
every
kind.
Yes, always an exchange.
Well, it's kind of that idea that if you see your wife struggling with whatever tough time at work, you might go take your kid away from the house for a little bit to give her some self time,
compassion.
I like and
that.
so that's where it comes back the idea that, but you're doing it not because you want to feel good as the hero. You're doing it because, once again, the altruism kind of thing. You want her to be able to recoup and get back her mental state.
Because of why it'll make you feel better, and if she's
that's an added bonus.
This is true, Jack. But there with codependence, a word pops in as you're pushing back at that I think will clarify some of this that's unspoken. When you're in unhealthy levels of this, there is a need there.
Yeah, that's what I say. Obsession, right? Like
almost obsession. There's a need. If you're not okay, like I really can't be okay. Like there's a big grab there, and of course, if somebody's having a rough day, you're going to be bummed for him. You feel for him. I really felt very passionately for my son who went through boot camp. I knew he was having a hard time, a rough time, a purposely rough time. I also knew that he was going to be better off for it and gain from it.
Right.
So I could have, if I were codependent, being crazy about it. But I didn't need Adam to be home to be well. Do you know the home was quiet? Neil, we didn't wash hardly any towels those 2 months, brother. I'm telling you, the wrappers were not on the table and crumbs were put in the garbage can right after we ate them.
We're trying to figure out what's going to happen.
amazing.
What's going to happen when Mason leaves for college because he's so noisy.
It's trippy.
And just having him gone for like a day, it's like it's weird because where the rest of us are overall relatively quiet, but Mason's always making noise, singing, whistling drives my. He's like a guinea pig. He's whistling all over the place. But yeah, it's going to be really weird when
it
when
is.
he's gone.
It's a change, and so with codependence, it's not like you can't cope with that. You can deal with things that happen in life, but boy, there's a strong need there.
When your actions become irrational just to appease the other person, or keep the other person happy.
Yeah,
and I think that can go deep.
And I think speaking to offspring, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a genetic thing too. Like you're programmed to want your offspring to thrive.
Yeah, to survive.
Right, to survive.
To not die.
By
my own hand, especially. Sorry.
No, I feel you. But yeah, like.
There is some wiring there.
Right.
You're right. There's some wiring there, but probably honestly in the animal brain wiring, though, if the bear eats the kid, I'm gonna be okay and I'm gonna run. I'm gonna take the other little kiddos and get out of Dodge, right? So there's a balance that's there and in place, and I think that the emotional dynamics that get that into a destructive place, you will literally be eaten by the bear too. You think about that. That's not good. and so we have survival mechanisms that are in our body just as much, Jack, in that rearing, so that we can't get eaten. And so we're non-codependent to start, and we experience pain and we experience emotions. And like if you're not codependent and you marry somebody that has an addiction problem, you're looking at somebody literally like being Walking Dead, and you just get sucked in. And you end up your own life energy just gets sucked dry, trying to get this system, this family system in balance. It is exhausting and draining to the soul.
There's something that kind of haunts me till this day that is directly related to that, and because I had to go against my character. I was at a gas station. I just had to, pulled over. I was on the highway on the way home. I was running out, so I had to stop. And I get out, and this tattooed couple, obviously on meth, right? I mean,
Oh, boy.
crystal clear, right? And this woman screaming and this guy screaming, and like it's ugly. And
So they're fighting like with each other.
yeah,
Okay.
she's probably trying to get away. She's screaming help.
Oh boy.
And as much as I wanted to jump in, I knew that it would make no difference because of that situation right there.
It's the self-preservation that kicks in.
And well, that and knowing that it was a codependent relationship.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
That
okay.
it was me stepping in is not going to change anything because she would just be right back.
It's a tough call. It's a tough reality to
Yeah.
watch. Yeah, and you can imagine if that's being watched in your personal relationships or something. I mean, it's a real eerie, yucky feeling when you see somebody that's codependent, and you might not even know what's going on, but you're just like, dude, like, are you really gonna bleed yourself out here, like to make this person well? Like, it's, yeah, like domestic violence relationships are horrible to watch and tough stuff.
Yeah, that was that stuck with me because, like you everything that you've been raised to do,
Step in, protect.
in.
Yeah.
And the only other time I had to deal with that was in China. Different story, but but yeah. So it's still to this day kind of just makes me go, ugh.
Well, I appreciate for sharing that, Jack. And I mean, it's a feeling that you have when you see it. It's like one of those things where you might not know how to define it, but you know it when you feel it.
Yep.
And it doesn't feel good.
No,
It feels
not at all.
very, very bad. We are running over, Neil, but the opposite of codependence. Do you remember anything?
Yeah, it's counterdependent.
Yeah, that was a different term. I never even heard of it. No, was that the term, or are you making
Yeah.
a joke?
No, I looked
You
up in
looked
my
it up here.
notes.
Okay.
I have my notes. That's why I bring them.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. That was a new term. Counterdependence is like the opposite. I thought about it after.
I mean, what would that dynamic look like?
Well, that's what I was going to say, because I really did some thinking about it, and it's not really that complicated that we landed on. The term counterdependence is just a new term for old thoughts that we've had in the field. And the old thoughts that we've had in the field, to answer your question, Jack, what it looks like is an avoidant person. Like
So like
somebody
if you're in a
that's-
good relationship, you do everything to push the person away.
Right. It's like, I need my space. I'm pulling back. It's the engulfment stuff, the avoidant attachment styles. That's kind of the opposite. It's like isolationism and avoidant, and being a porcupine, even to be more severe with this, like stay away from me or I'll poke you. That's the opposite of codependence.
So speaking of both, and we'll wrap this up real quick, but counter or co-dependency, is this a developed behavior, or is this something?
Good question. Yes, I think it really is more of a developed thing. A lot of the concepts in mental health have a biological, genetic reality. Neurology is the newest bastion of informational science about this, right? And then you have social and emotional experiences on this other side of the continuum. I call it the tale of two tapes. If you listen to the show, you've heard that before. This codependent thing is much more over on that side of the equation.
And it's
than any
treatable?
biological. Behavioral, yeah. Therapy is awesome for this, like
Okay.
to help you set boundaries and learn how to set limits and kind of be good at preserving yourself and developing some emotional resiliency internal. It's like, yeah, there's a lot that we do with that, particularly in therapy. Medicine, like, no, nothing.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
no Adderall for that, Jack. All right, closing thoughts, Neil. I think we need to shut it down. We need to get rolling.
Nope. Good shows. I'm glad you were here. I thought it was funny. Like I said, talk about Adderall. I'm like, oh, this will be funny with Jack, because I knew.
He set me up, y'all.
I did. But no, it was great going through these things again. And once again, it's the ADHD stuff. It's great having the topic come from people who deal with it on a regular basis, just because I don't know. And so it's great to have your take on it versus Victoria's as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Appreciate you doing
I've
that,
enjoyed
Jack,
it,
for
and it's
sure.
been fun hanging with Jack longer. So
All right.
Yeah, man.
Jack, I appreciate you hanging by, and I think that we'll definitely see you next week. We'll be reviewing
month.
next week, next month,
next month.
next year. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Neil. Next month when we're reviewing the stuff that we get into. And, if you stuck around, I should have did this on the front end. we have a cool announcement. Dang, we need to add this on the beginning, Neil. The next show, we have some commitments with The Bachelor. There is a Bachelor. I'm pretty excited about that. One of the past Bachelors has agreed to come on the Through a Therapist show, and I'm excited about that.
Is he still a bachelor?
Teaser. We're going to leave it at that.
Dun, dun, dun.
Y'all have a good